Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the November 13th meeting of the Connecticut Paid Leave Board of Directors. I would like to call the meeting to order, and the time is 9:02. Stephanie, would you kindly take attendance?
Yes, thank you. Good morning, everyone. Eva Bermuda Zimmerman. I think you're on mute, Eva.
I was present.
Thank you. Isha Canada. I don't think she's joined us. Adrian Cochran. I think I saw Adrian.
Sorry, I did the same thing. I'm here.
That's okay, thank you.
Okay.
Andrea Comer.
Present.
Thank you. I believe Sheila Hummel has not joined us yet. Ellen McKitterick.
Present.
Thank you. Eleanor Michael.
Present.
Fran Pastor.
I am here, present. Thank you.
Thank you. David Salazar Austin.
Present.
Mike Soltis.
Present.
Morning. Molly Weston Williamson.
Yep.
Holly Williams.
Present.
Janae Woods Weber.
Present.
Thank you. Justin Zartman, I believe, has not joined us yet. Melissa Gibran.
Here.
Thank you. And I believe Sheila Hummel has just joined us.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Thank you. All right, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Stephanie, can you identify any members of the public that are joining us?
So it looks like we have, good morning, we have CTN this morning with us. And then we have Tom
We just
and
have,
Katrina from Whittlesey.
sorry, we have several of our usual visitors, Fran.
Okay, great. Well, thank you all for joining us then. And then I would like to ask for a review of the October 9th meeting minutes. Are there any corrections or items for discussion? Okay, may I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
May I
Second.
have a second? Thank
Second.
you, Molly. Oh, Holly.
That's
Thank
okay.
you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Mike will abstain.
Thank you, Mike, as will I, and the motion carries. Thank you, everyone. So moving right along to item 3, Tom and Katrina, welcome, and would you kindly provide Whittlesey's presentation of the audited financial statements for the fiscal year ending June 30th of 25.
Thank you. I'd just like to quickly request, can I share? Oh, thank you. I think you just gave me access.
Yes, you're all set.
Yeah, you should.
All right, thank you. Can you confirm you can see my screen, please?
Yes, we can see your screen.
All right, thank you. Tom will kick it off.
Yeah.
then.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for having us. My name is Tom Goldfuss, partner at Whittlesey, and Katrina Olson, senior manager, here to go over a brief summary of our audit results and answer any questions that anyone has. We understand there's a lengthy agenda today, so we'll try to keep it brief. We've met with obviously we've met with management, we've met with Holly as well, and also have met with the Finance and Audit Committee to go over our results. We provided the independent auditors report with our financial statements, as well as the required communications letter to everybody in advance. So hopefully everyone had a chance to go over this, and if there's any questions, we can discuss. But our audit was issued an unmodified opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that you're looking for from an independent audit firm on the financial statements. It basically means that we believe the financial statements present fairly in all material respects in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. No compliance findings or significant deficiencies were noted in internal controls over compliance or for financial reporting. We use an IT control specialist at Whittlesey to review certain high-level IT controls in the general IT environment, and no areas were identified there requiring concerns. This was our second year auditing the authority. It went smoothly. Your management team is really does a good job with helping us complete the audit, providing us information, doing the accounting. They're very knowledgeable. They know how to do the accounting. They know how to make the adjustments from year end, which include a couple of accrual adjustments to go from a cash basis to accrual basis, but they complete all of that timely and provide us with all of the support. Again, as I mentioned, there are no issues noted for the government auditing standards report, which is a separate report that we issue in conjunction with this audit, which discusses internal controls and compliance. And we did not identify any misstatements during the course of our audit. The next page are some of those required communications that are contained in our letter to you. Just some of the more important ones to discuss. All of these are in a positive sense. There was no issues or matters to discuss further, or any areas that we need to bring to your attention. But I will say that management's responsible for preparing the financial statements and then issuing us a management representation letter, which they have done. The only two new accounting standards adopted or changed during the year were as a result of implementing required GASB statements regarding compensated absences and certain risk disclosures. Katrina will talk a little bit more about those, but those were not material, didn't require any significant adjustments, and really just amount to some brief disclosures in the footnotes. As I mentioned, no audit adjustments were identified. There's no fraud or illegal activities identified during the audit, or material weaknesses. We did not encounter any difficulties in completing the audit. And then finally, which I think is most important, we are independent with respect to the authority under all relevant professional and regulatory standards. And of course, that didn't change during the course of our audit, which allows us to issue our report. The last area to communicate is the required supplementary information that's contained within the financial statements related to pension OPEB disclosures, as well as the management discussion and analysis. We don't issue an opinion on those. However, we do perform limited procedures to make sure that that information appears accurate and agrees to the underlying financial statements. And again, so that was completed, and just bring that to your attention.
All right, I think with that, I'm gonna take it from Tom just to wrap up our slides. So this slide just talks about our significant audit areas and transactions. We did go through this in detail with the audit committee last month. Our audit is performed on a risk-based approach. So that means we focus our attention on areas deemed most significant to the financial statements of the authority. So those areas include cash and cash equivalents, investments, contributions, revenue and receivables, benefit claims expense and the related reserve liability, and then also the net pension liability and net OPEB liability. So just very quickly, a few of the audit procedures we perform include things like confirming balances directly with financial institutions. We also take samples of specific transactions to test internal controls and also review the underlying support. We also perform analytical procedures. And then finally, we do review the actuarial assumptions that underlie the certain significant liabilities, such as the benefit reserve liability and the pension and OPEB liability. So as Tom alluded to, I believe during the year, you're accustomed to seeing financials on a cash basis. So that means the revenue is recorded when you have that cash in hand, and benefit claims expenses are recorded when the actual payments are made. In other words, when the cash is outflowing. So for purposes of the audited financial statements, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, revenues and expenses have to be recorded on the accrual basis. So we just have two slides quickly on two of the most significant areas is impacted. So of course, on the revenue side, that's contributions. On an accrual basis, the total contributions from participants for fiscal 25 was 479 million, and that is including receivables of 127 million. So again, contributions are typically remitted quarterly, and that receivable represents that last quarter, the June 30, 2025 quarter contributions that were not received in cash until subsequent to fiscal year end. This slide just covers on the expense side, the benefit claims expense. So again, on the accrual basis, your benefit claims expense for fiscal 25 was 451 million. That includes a reserve liability of nearly 61 million. So that represents kind of an estimate of claims that were incurred but not yet paid out at fiscal year end. And that includes things like open claims that have outstanding payments yet to be paid, also some pending claims that are expected to be approved, and then finally claims incurred but not yet reported to the authority. And the authority, as you know, has an actuary that assists in calculating this, this estimate at fiscal year end. Just our final slide, we had worked with management and discussed also with the Finance and Audit Committee. There were several GASB statements that are some that were effective this past year, some that are effective this coming year. So the authority did adopt GASB 101, compensated absences, and also GASB 102, certain risk disclosures. So compensated absences did not have a significant impact to authority. It just resulted in some additional disclosure. Same with certain risk disclosures. There's a new footnote in the financial statements to address this requirement. Next year, I should say this year, since it's effective right now for fiscal year 2026, there's GASB 103 is going into effect. So these two standards, GASB 103 and 104, do not change the underlying accounting, but they do change reporting. So the audited financial statements of the authority for fiscal year 26 do need to reflect these two GASB changes that enhances and adds additional detail requirements for disclosures. Great, that concludes our presentation. I know you have a very busy agenda today, so I hope this answers any questions, but Tom and I are happy to take any quick questions if there are any.
Thank you, Katrina. Any questions for Katrina or Tom? Anyone? Okay, well, thank you so much for that
Yeah,
quick
that's
and
really
thorough. Oh,
Melissa's
I'm
right
sorry,
here.
Melissa.
Thank
And
you.
also Justin is here, by the way.
Okay, great. I don't know if my question is so much for our the folks who just made our presentation. Maybe it's a question for Aaron. Do we ever intersect with the state auditors, or do we only have a private company involved in our overview?
We have both. So we have the auditors of public accounts who audit us just the way they do for regular state agencies at the same cadence. And then we also have Little C.
Okay, great. Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was a crossover, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks, Melissa. Anybody else? Okay, thank you so much, Tom and Katrina. I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Michael, can you lead us in the discussion on the proposed revisions to the private plan audit guide?
Absolutely. Thank you, Fran, and good morning, everybody. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, and hopefully everyone can see the PowerPoint presentation.
You can see your screen.
Excellent. Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about some recommended changes that we have to the private plan audit guide. The hope is that the board will vote at the end of this conversation to post these for public notice and comment before eventually finalizing them in a board meeting a couple months from now. The private plan audit guide, as you can tell by the name, is the guide that we use whenever we audit private plans. We have some changes we're recommending based on experiences we've gone through over the past couple of years of auditing. Before I talk about the specific changes, I just want to give a brief snapshot of where we are as far as the number of audits we're performing each year. So as you can see, this is a list of a table with the various years and the different audit types. Application audits, where we audit the process the employer went through before holding the vote, when they held the vote, and then when they submitted their application to us for a private plan. Contribution audits, which is where we review the deductions taken from employees' paychecks, as well as what happens to the funds once they are deducted. Claims audits, where we review the claims process, as well as a few sample claims from the audit period. And then financial solvency audits, which is primarily focused on self-insured plans, where we ensure that they have funds, necessary funds to actually administer the private plan themselves, as well as that they're considering sort of the responsibility and risks that come with administering a private plan. So you can see over time, there is growth. In 2023, there's that number in parentheses. That just reflects an audit that we launched, but actually never concluded because they decided to stay with the public program. So counting in the numbers, but wasn't a full audit. And then in 2025, the numbers in parentheses reflect audits that we are scheduled to launch before the end of the year, but they haven't yet launched. So the goal is, at least my goal is, to do between 20 to 25 audits each year. That would be between 2 to 3% of the total number of private plans currently in place. I think we probably would have hit that target this year, but we did lose our associate general counsel at the end of the summer, which did slow down the number of audits we were able to perform in the second half of the year. So goal for next year is to try and get between 20 and 25. I mentioned that we had learned some lessons after doing a couple of years of audits. I did want to talk through that really quickly before going to the actual changes. One of the main changes we have for the audit guide is the way that we are using that document. Originally, when we had created it, it was meant to be almost a process document and workbook that got completed over the course of the audit. So in the kickoff meeting, we would actually share the audit guide, on the screen with the employer and their TPA and go through the various sections of it. That wasn't the best way to communicate, and we figured out we should probably have a more formal PowerPoint deck to talk through that. And then the audit guide becomes more of a rule and process document and less of a workbook. So that was one of the changes we decided to work through. Related is the second item, where we had transferred most of the audit-specific items, which by that I mean the sort of details that are specific to that particular audit, moving that to the appendix, so that if we ever need to reference it, it's easy to find, is at the back of the guide rather than scattered throughout the various pages of the document. Another thing we decided to change about our audit process is we added a couple of meetings. We always had a kickoff meeting with the audit participants. Now there's a couple other meetings that will also occur on every audit. One is particular for the claims audit, which is where we will talk with the TPA or insurance carrier, have them share their audit process with us before we ask for any documents, just so we have an idea of how their process works and we're better able to ask the right questions and ask for the right documents. The other meeting we added was a draft report meeting. This is after we have drafted our initial report. We actually have a meeting with the employer to talk about our conclusions and give them an opportunity to respond. We also still give them 2 weeks after that meeting to provide any formal responses as well before that report becomes final. This was an option originally. Now we're just making it a standard part of the process. Second last item, we clarified language about in our requests, both from the employer as well as the employee survey when there's an application audit, just to better communicate what we're asking for. We had a few instances where we had a lot of back and forth with employers, and we didn't get the right information at first. So we wanted to make sure that our questions were clear or that our requests were clear. And then finally, we did add some checklist items to the things that we were reviewing, including annual notice and policy documents. And then we consolidated some of the existing checklist items. The one that comes to mind here is the claim calculation, where we previously had 3 or 4 different checklist items related to the calculation. But at the end of the day, what matters is they pay the right amount. So maybe that should be one item. So we need to make that change. Okay, finally, talking about the actual specific changes we made. Hopefully the board received both copies of the recommended changes, the red line version, as well as the clean version. The red line version is going to tell you exactly every single change that was on the document. This is meant to be sort of the summary of those changes. I divided those into 3 categories, from least substantive to most substantive. Given the agenda today, I'm not going to go through each item. I'm just going to go through the highlighted ones. So as far as the least substantive in the style formatting category, as I mentioned before, we moved the audit particular items to the appendix. We also included an attendance checkbox to ensure that we have a record of who attended what meeting and maybe who received what questionnaires, just if we need that for record keeping purposes. Moving on to the technical and slightly more substantive changes. One item I want to highlight is we moved away from the 3 required categories. Originally, the audit guide required any conclusion or finding fit into one of these 3 categories: systemic issues, which is sort of the larger issue, lack of sufficient safeguards, and deviation from process, which is sort of the smaller issue. That works for a lot of the findings, but it doesn't work for everything. So we're keeping those as options, but we're not requiring every single conclusion to fit into one of those categories, because sometimes it's a one-time only thing. For example, the application audit. We're just reviewing this one time that they held the process for the vote and submitting their application. It's hard to tell whether something's a systemic issue or just a one-off in that case. Moving to the last item, originally audit guide was designed to include all the sections, whether or not they apply to a particular audit. That just ended up with unnecessary pages, so we decided to allow us to remove sections that didn't apply to a particular audit. So finally, moving to the most substantive changes, and I'm going to go through all of these because I think these are the more important items. First one is requiring for all audit types that they provide proof that their policy and plan documents were provided or at least made available to employees, as well as the annual notice that's required by law. The purpose for this change is, besides it being a requirement in statute that they provide the annual notice, is that the employees can be our first line of defense sometimes, and whether this private plan is acting appropriately. So if they're aware of what the requirements of the private plan are by seeing their policy document, they can then know whether the plan followed the right steps and deviated from that process. And then maybe they can file a complaint with us. So that's important that all employees are aware of what they're entitled to. Moving on, we had a couple changes specific to application audits. One is just having a checklist item to confirm that the documentation that was provided to employees prior to the vote was accurate and misleading. It's obviously much easier to convince people to go with a private plan if you potentially lie about the public program. We've not seen that on actual audits, but we do want to make sure that the documentation is accurate, because that's what they're using to decide whether to vote for or against the private plan. Also in the application audits, we had some minor edits to the wording of the employee survey. So we send a survey to all employees who were around at the time of the vote, just ensuring that they did receive the documents that the employer told us they did, and that they were given the opportunity to vote. This is our sort of one time that we interact with the employees. They're not in the kickoff meeting. They don't know the full context of the audit. So we do want to make sure that the questions we ask are exact and precise, so we get the answers we're expecting, or we know if something's gone wrong. So we did have some changes to that. Moving to the contribution audits, we removed a requirement that we review approved claims. The idea initially was that if the funds deducted from employees are being used to pay claims, we should be looking at the claims to ensure that the contributions are being used appropriately and not funding inappropriate claims. We do still think that's important, but that should be in the claims audit rather than contribution audit. So it's still part of our review, but it's not part of the contribution audit in particular. Moving to the financial solvency audit, we added one additional document as acceptable to prove that the employer has the funds necessary to administer a private plan, and that is the public shareholder reports. And finally, and this has sort of been a pain point for us on private plans, one of the requirements for all audit types is that their contacts in their Connecticut Paid Leave employer account is up to date and accurate. It's very easy for those contacts to get stale, particularly when they have a private plan, because sort of we're not top of mind for them. And then, they lose their HR contact, they replace them with someone else. They never update the contact in the system. So we're not sending notices to the right area. So one of the things that we're reviewing on every one of these audits is going to be that contact information and make sure that they keep that up to date. I went this really fast. Happy to take any questions that the board has, but as I said before, sort of the goal here is to vote to post these for public comment. I'll stop sharing.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any questions or comments for Michael? I'm not seeing any hand. Oh, Molly, there you go. Thank you.
I'll be speedy. I just want to say, I think these changes all make sense, but I just want to lift up for the board's awareness how important these audits are and how valuable it is that the staff is investing time in this. I think it's a really essential part of making sure that private plans, which are a part of this whole system that we're overseeing, are doing the job they're supposed to be doing. There are other states that are not doing as good a job on making sure this kind of oversight is happening. So I want to just applaud all of the work that the staff is doing here. It's something I literally will be lifting up as an example to other states this afternoon. So it's particularly top of mind, but I think the changes all make sense and I'm excited to move this forward.
Thank you so much, Molly. I do want to thank the entire team. They're great. They don't get to come to the board meeting and present to this, but they're doing a great job on it. And I agree with everything you said. And really the goal is compliance. We're not trying to punish them. We're not trying to force them back into the public program. We're trying to give them the tools that are necessary to make sure they're doing it correctly, because it's a hard job. A lot of these carriers have, private plans in Massachusetts, New York, Connecticut. We all have different rules. I can understand why there's some confusion. So it's really about getting them into compliance and what Connecticut requires.
Thank you, Michael. And Molly, thanks so much for sharing that. They were my thoughts exactly. The granular detail of what's being addressed is really impressive. Melissa.
Thank you. My only question is how many private plan are there in Connecticut? How many are we talking about? What's the full universe?
Yeah, great question. At the moment, I don't have the exact number, but it's somewhere between 850 and 900. January 1st tends to be a date that a lot of employers are considering changes to their insurance policy. So often we have a lot of new plans that come on January 1st and a lot of existing plans that come back to the public program on January 1st. So I'll have a better idea in January. Maybe I'll share that in the board meeting, what the actual number is at that time, but it's between 850 and 900.
Thanks, Melissa. Thank you, John. Anyone else? Okay. I think we can move on and ask for a vote to post notice of the proposed revisions to the private plan audit guide in the Connecticut Law Journal for public comment. May I have a motion to authorize the authority to post the proposed revisions to the private plan audit guide for public comment?
So moved.
I'll
Second.
Like, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the motion carries. Thank you so much, Michael. That was really detailed and really, kudos to you and the team for taking that kind of time to really address those important points. Thank you, everyone. The motion carries, and we will move on to number 6. Erin, would you kindly lead the discussion in the review of the bylaws?
Thank you so much, Fran. So we shared the bylaws with the board. I can pull them up if anyone has questions, but in the bylaws, we say that we will review them every 3 years. The last time we reviewed them officially was November of 2022. So we just want to bring them back to the board's attention. As a staff, we do not believe that any changes are necessary. We also talked about this at the Policy and Personnel Committee meeting and discussed what the bylaws say and concluded, or the committee concluded that they did not identify any areas of change that would be necessary. So we just want to create this opportunity and space for the full board. Happy to answer any questions you may have about them. Happy to discuss any changes you would like. If the board would like us to make changes, we will develop a draft and bring it back next month. But if not, we'll just move ahead and check the box that we did look at them and make sure that they're still current.
Thanks, Erin. Any questions or comments for Erin on the bylaws? Okay, hearing none, we will move right along. We are going to John for the quarterly claims administration update.
Okay, thank you, Fran. I'm just going to share my screen.
We can see your screen, John.
Okay, thank you. Just got a little overlap here with my image, so bear with me for a moment. Okay, good morning, everyone. I have a brief overview of claims administration for October 2025 and a 2024 to 2025 year-over-year data comparison for you this morning. The 3-month claims filed trend is 28,340 claims received with a monthly moving average of 9,447 claims. This is a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 10.36% compared to the August to October 2024 period. October 2025 cases filed of 9,953 cases is the highest monthly claims filed total in program history thus far. Year over year, October claim volume is also up by 11.34% over October of 2024. Year-over-year claims filed show program growth with an increase of 11,631 claims. This represents a 10.92% growth rate in claims filed year over year in 24-25 compared to 23-24. The data presented includes 12,168 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason for 23-24 and 11,893 pregnancy cases with bonding as a second reason from 24 to 25. And this slide illustrates the 12-month claims by leave reason and percentage of claims filed by gender statistical trends. The categories represented in the bar chart are the 4 largest leave reasons, totaling 99.4% of claims filed. Those reasons, as you can see here, have been relatively consistent over time, with own injury and illness at almost half of the caseload, followed by bonding claims and caregiver, and then pregnancy and childbirth in order of volume. Other leave categories are in the chart on the right and total a little more than 0.5% of total claims filed. The bonding data presented on this slide also includes 11,893 cases representing the bonding segment of pregnancy claims filed. And this slide highlights the reporting impact of customer service improvements made in streamlining pregnancy and bonding cases into one case. Cases filed are shown in blue, and the associated bonding segment of pregnancy cases filed are shown in orange. The reporting of these incremental bonding cases more accurately demonstrate program growth and represent an 11.19% increase in cases filed in the 12-month period ended October 31st, 2025. Counting the bonding segment of pregnancy cases as separate cases provides a level playing field to compare year-over-year claim statistics, and when comparing the Connecticut paid leave program to other state paid leave programs that all count these cases separately. This slide is the adjudicated claims status slide. Fiscal year-over-year adjudicated claims show a 1.48% approval rate increase from 24 to 25. When adding the bonding segment of pregnancy cases back in, approved claims rise to almost 83,000, and the approval rate rises an additional 2.43% to 80.7%. The denial rate correspondingly drops to 19.3%. Down below, the 6-month May 2025 to October 2025 period totaling 36,282 approvals with an approval rate of 78.77%. When including the bonding segment of pregnancy cases, approved claims increase to 42,285, and the approval rate also increases to 81.22%. And the race and ethnicity data that you see here was collected on an opt-in basis beginning in August of 2023. The data reported are cumulative statistics from August 23 through October 25. The opt-in response rate for both race and ethnicity has remained consistent at about 33 and 32% respectively. Approval and denial rates are relatively consistent with overall program rates, although there are a couple of categories that have lower approval rates, some of the smaller categories that you can see there. To the extent those differences are not skewed by low response rates, think additional outreach efforts in 2025 by the community education coordinators may help to improve some of these approval percentages. And the weekly payments trend line graph shows significant weekly payment growth to an average of $9.39 million per week over the last 26 weeks. The trend is being driven by three components: a year-over-year increase in claims filed of 9.68%, an increase in the approval rate of 4.43% over the same time period, and two increases in weekly benefit rates tied to minimum wage increases. These minimum wage increases compound to a 9.26% increase in weekly benefit rates. You also see on that graph in December and January, you will see some lower weekly payment data there, and that reflects seasonality in claims filed that we have seen consistently over the last 3 years in leaves filed in November and December. And on these payment insights, approved insights, the number of unique employees paid by Connecticut Paid Leave has risen to over 182,000, and the total amount the program has paid to Connecticut workers is now over $1.4 billion. 2025 year-to-date total days paid has also increased by 11.15% compared to 2024. Year-over-year, year-to-date payments are up by 16.58% thus far in 2025. Average weekly payments over the last 26 weeks have risen to $9.39 million per week, and all payment metrics show significant growth from 23 to 24 and 24 to 25 as well. And on the call center metrics, the call center metrics show the average number of monthly calls into the call center over the last 12 months was 30,001 per month, with 89% of those calls answered in 30 seconds or less. Additionally, while year-over-year claims filed rose by 12.62%, total call volume for the same 12-month period was down by 14,602 calls in that same time period, or 3.9%. This demonstrates reduced demand for customer service on a significantly greater number of claims filed. And also on this slide, claimant call types received by type of customer service skill were 66% for existing claim service, 27% for new claims, and 7% for payment inquiries. And that concludes the claims presentation. Are there any questions? Hi, Molly.
Hey, thank you so much. This is super helpful. I just had two quick questions.
Sure.
One is, I think if I saw correctly, once we include bonding claims separately, the denial rate for the last 6 months, excuse me, is about 18%. Is that right?
Yes, denial rate is just under 19% at this point, including those bonding cases, as you mentioned.
Got it. So I just want to highlight that that's really good progress from where we have been in the past. That's a good move towards having more approvals, which hopefully means the people who are applying are people that we're going to approve, that we're streamlining this process. So I just want to note that change and make sure we're not missing that point, especially because I think it's something that has been talked about a lot in state-to-state comparisons, the denial rate. So seeing that trend, I think, is salient. My other question was, I believe one of the slides noted that something like 16% of claims were below the minimum amount. And so I wanted to ask what that meant, because I assume there's an explanation of why there are claims that are below the minimum amount.
Are we asking about this information here?
Yeah, in the orange box, it says 16.6% of claims were paid below the minimum payment, which I assume has an explanation, but doesn't seem intuitive right there.
Yeah, so on this slide, the segments that they've broken this into are related to percentages of claims that were paid, at various levels here. And when they say below the minimum, that is, I believe, simply below the 40-hour-a-week minimum is what they're referring to there. So somebody that may be working part-time, etc.
Can I jump in?
Sure.
Because this is something that the language isn't great, but it's one of those things that we haven't changed because we've just developed it for so long now. It reflects the folks who earn less than 95%. I'm sorry. It reflects the folks whose average weekly earnings is less than 40 times Connecticut minimum wage, and therefore the folks whose benefit rate is 95% of that average earnings. So it could be, as John said, that that's because they're part-time, or it could be that it's almost always that, because you shouldn't, if you're a full-time worker at minimum wage, you should be at the middle bucket. The between minimum and maximum is really the folks who earn between 40 times Connecticut minimum wage and 60 times Connecticut minimum wage. And then the max weekly benefit reflects the fact that our weekly benefit is capped at 60 times Connecticut minimum wage. So it's really just those three buckets.
Andrea?
Andrea, yeah.
John. Yes, thanks, John. Through you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to note the increase in claims, but then also the lowering in calls. I think that that's a function of the incredible work that the outreach team is doing. So I just wanted to sort of call that out and recognize that the work that the entire team is doing, but also the impact that this extra effort around outreach has had. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andrea. That was a really good point to raise because the fund is doing exactly what it's supposed to do, right? And we're growing and more people are getting the help that they need. And that is the whole point of the program. Anyone else? Okay, I don't see any hands on my screen.
Okay.
I am going to move on.
right,
John,
thank you.
thank you so much. And we're going to move along to Molly. Would you kindly provide an update on the Connecticut paid leave comparison with other state programs? I'm so anxious to see this.
Molly, would you like me to share my screen?
Yes, please. This is actually perfect timing because John teed up really nicely a lot of what we're going to talk about. So the comparison here is really focusing specifically on just comparing benefit amounts. So sort of at a particular dollar amount of earnings, what would that translate into in terms of benefits in different state programs? Because every state uses different formulas, they're structured in different ways. Every state has a different cap. And even as someone who has been working on these kinds of programs full-time for a decade, I find it really hard to intuitively understand, like, if it's this percentage of wages up to this amount and this percentage of wages above this amount and at this cap, I don't know how to intuitively understand what that actually translates into in real dollars. So the idea here was, let's give examples at a bunch of different earnings levels of what different formulas translate into to help us contextualize where Connecticut is sitting. Because I think as we've been talking about over the course of a number of meetings, the board is simultaneously working through two things, one of which is really thinking about the long-term financial health of the program and the contribution rate and the fund, while at the same time knowing that usage is growing. And as Fran absolutely correctly put it, that's what we want to be seeing. We also know we've got a ways to go. We are not at the usage rates that we want to be at. We know that there are workers who are still not getting there. And that's not because Connecticut is doing a bad job, just because it's hard and it takes time. And we're not going to get to the full usage that we want to see overnight. Like, this is still a relatively young program. And so in understanding both of those things at once, I think it's helpful to think about, are the benefits we're delivering to workers who are taking them meeting workers' needs? Are they at a sufficient level for folks to take them? And also to help us think about how the current benefit levels might translate into whether people are or are not using the program. And so the examples here, I'm less concerned about sort of where Connecticut ranks up. Like, I'm not worried we're like not going to make the playoffs. It's more that these are useful examples for helping us think about, if we sliced and diced things slightly differently, what might that mean for workers? And sort of how are we stacking up as one way to think about, are we doing the thing we need to do, which is delivering the benefits that Connecticut workers need, that Connecticut workers can afford to use. Since, as we think about a lot, these are benefits Connecticut workers have paid for. And if we're delivering benefits that workers can't afford to use, that they are paying for, we're not doing the thing that we set out to do. I am not going to go through every single cell of this table because that would be a waste of everybody's time, and I'm happy to send around the full table later. The big thing to know is that we have in the white column that has the big black box around it, that's Connecticut benefits for a particular earnings level. Any cell that's highlighted in yellow means that at a given income level, if you were in that state, you would be getting less money than Connecticut gives you. And any cell that's highlighted in blue means that if you were in that state, you'd be getting more money than Connecticut gives you. And so I think big picture, when we look at this, one, this is not a table that's all yellow or all blue, right? Like this is not a situation in which Connecticut is doing worse than all states for all workers. It's not a situation in which Connecticut is doing better than other states for all workers. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. And I think that's an okay place to be. I also think it's really relevant to think about sort of who we're at yellow versus who we're at blue for. So as folks can see, if you look across the top couple of rows of the table, so here we're talking about fairly low income workers, folks earning $600, $750 a week. That's folks earning under $40,000 a year. For those workers, Connecticut's benefits are higher than virtually any other state. So for fairly low income workers, given Connecticut minimum wage, here we're talking about folks who are might be part-time, folks who are at or pretty close to minimum wage. For those workers, Connecticut is doing really strong. And I think that's a positive feature. I think that's reflected in what we just saw in the slightly confusing part about what does the word minimum mean in the claims presentation. Like, if we're at something like 17% of claims are from workers who are in this, like, effectively what that's translating into is these fairly low income tranches, I think that's a reflection of the smart choice Connecticut made to really prioritize a really strong benefit for quite low income workers. The flip side of that is, as we get higher up into middle and really sort of middle high income workers, we start seeing a lot more blue on this table. So we start seeing that as you get into workers who are earning above $1,300, $1,400 a week, we start seeing that translating into most other states are doing better. And sort of the further up you get, the more pronounced that becomes. And that is really a function. Part of it is about the actual sort of structure of the wage replacement formulas, but a lot of that's the cap. And so as we're thinking about sort of, are we meeting Connecticut's workers' needs? One of the things that I think we should just keep thinking about and discussing, I don't think we can or should make any kind of recommendation at this time, but a thing to keep thinking about is the fact that, as you'll see in that white sort of bolded column, Connecticut benefits go flat pretty early. So right now in Connecticut, because of where our maximum benefit sits, it's $981 a week. That's because that's 60 times state minimum wage, which is a unique way to set the maximum cap. Most other states set their cap either as a percentage of state average weekly wage, or they pick a dollar figure and then adjust it for inflation. What that translates into is that right now, if you make about $65,000 a year, that's like between $1,200 and $1,300 a week. If you make about $65,000 a year, you're maxed out on benefits. So for every dollar you make above about $65,000 a year, you get $0 in additional benefits. You're going to get that $981 no matter what. And so I think as we're thinking about sort of what does that mean, what that means is that the further up you go, so if you're getting not a $65,000 a year, but say like an $85,000 a year worker, the percentage of your actual wages you're getting is going down because you're not getting additional dollars, even though you're earning additional dollars. And that's making it harder for folks to be able to afford to use the benefit because the gap between what the program guarantees them and what they'd be getting if they were working gets bigger and bigger. And I think particularly as we're thinking about folks who are in that sort of middle high bracket, you know, we're not talking about folks who, you know, are making $1 million a year, hopefully have savings, hopefully can get through a period of time with a gap. Like, we're talking about a lot of people who really are relying on those dollars and probably have calibrated, you know, their rent or their mortgage and their childcare expenses and their car payments to that understanding of their income. As that gap gets bigger, it becomes more challenging for those workers to use the benefit. And so I think that's a thing for us to think about. So if we want to think about that, like 85,000 a year range, as one marker, and I know these workers are not covered, but I think it's a useful marker. The average Connecticut teacher salary is about $86,000 a year. So if we want that as a marker of what's like a solid middle class job, that's in that like 1,600 to 1,750 a week range. That's where we start seeing it go blue kind of all the way across, right? Is around that like 85,000-ish range. Again, I think this is not, we need to sort of take action urgently, but I do think it's worth us continuing to think about for workers who are in that sort of 70,000 or above range. Are we delivering a benefit we think is strong enough? Are we delivering a benefit that we think workers are really able to use? Do we want to continue a conversation about adjusting that in the future, for which other states might give us useful examples to think about? Again, I don't think any of them are sort of magically perfect. They're trade-offs of all approaches, but I think those could give us examples to think about other ways we might structure benefits that might help us potentially better serve those workers. And the last thing I'll flag, it just to help us think about this table in relation to sort of Connecticut workers generally. The Connecticut median wage, so half people earn below, half people earn above, according to the most recent data we have, which is 2024 Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics data. Connecticut median is about $58,000 a year, which translates into about $1,100 a week. And so as we're thinking about this table is set up in a way where we're mostly seeing folks who are above that amount just because of the way we split out the numbers. But I think as we think about this, I think what that's telling us is for workers who are below median, we're doing pretty well. Like I think what we're seeing is a benefit that's pretty strong, that's a pretty high proportion of workers' income for those folks, and for those folks for whom getting as close as possible to 100% of what they're getting while they're working is the most important. Connecticut is doing pretty well. I think the flip side of that is for folks who are above median, and particularly for folks getting into that sort of high middle range, I think there's some work to do about making sure we're delivering the strong benefits and benefits that people need. And really, I said the last thing, but I'll add one more last thing, which is just to highlight from John's presentation. As we think about this flat benefit, so you hit that 981 and you just keep going, I believe what we just saw is almost half of workers are getting the maximum benefit of workers who are actually filing claims and having them approved. I don't off the top of my head know how that compares to other states, but my guess would be that's higher because that maximum kicks in sort of earlier in the income distribution. And so effectively we have a program in which for about half of workers, we have a benefit that's scaled to your income. And then for about half of approved claims, it's basically a flat benefit. You've hit a threshold and you're just getting a flat benefit. I think that's something to continue to consider and think about as we think about ways to strengthen and invest in this program for the future. But I think that my hope is that this is useful content to think about this as we move forward. I don't know who's facilitating, but I see Ava's hand up.
Ava, yeah.
So I'm curious if the committee could, not the board, but in our outreach committee, if it's appropriate to look at this a little bit more and then maybe make a suggestion of what could assist that trajectory of doing better. Is that a possibility of like what a recommendation could look like for future support in order to grow the program and not be flat?
I think somebody looking into this and making a recommendation is totally appropriate. It would require a statutory change to raise the maximum. That's hardwired into the statute. So I don't know. That feels like maybe that's policy and personnel, maybe that's the board, but I think it's certainly appropriate for someone to look at this and think about it, and I'm happy to help. I'm just not sure where the right place for that to sit is. That feels like maybe an Erin or Fran question, but I am 1000% on board with we should talk about whether this is doing what it needs to be doing and whether we should recommend changes.
Erin, did you want to respond to that? At the
Sure.
appropriate place, yeah.
Sure. So really, it is a full board. I mean, all of the elements of the board, it's a finance question, it's a policy question, and it's an outreach question. It is an area we've talked about before. It's one of the reasons we developed one of the metrics that the actuaries run for us is sort of when would we have enough money to either reduce contributions or feel secure that we could increase benefits. So I absolutely think this is something we should continue to talk about, and I think any committee can think about different elements of it, but it is, it's not a decision to be entered into lightly. What are the words of the marriage ceremony? But soberly, deliberately, all of those things, right? Because it's a long-term commitment. But I think it's something that the board and all of its committees should be thinking about as we move forward and balance the contribution side with the benefit side. I know Melissa has her hand up too.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to have a couple questions and a comment. The first is, I think it's important for folks to just also recognize that the minimum wage is not stagnant. And so in Connecticut, we have, our minimum wage is set to inflation. So having a 60 times minimum wage, there should be an asterisk on that because the minimum wage is going to be changing. So I just wanted to make that point. Also, I have a question for Molly through you. Is the earnings chart that you showed, is that pre-tax or post-tax?
So this is just a raw feed in. Typically, state programs are doing these calculations off of gross income. So typically, I won't speak for when we have the actual claims experts on the call, I won't speak for Connecticut, but typically, the way these calculations are happening is, what's your top level number? We feed that into the formula, and that's how your benefit is calculated.
Okay, great, thanks. And then I'm glad Erin mentioned the actuary scenarios, because as you were talking, my mind flipped back to that presentation where we had several different scenarios, and I think it might be helpful, Erin, if you could resend those scenarios just so we could see, kind of tied into what Molly's speaking about. And then lastly, as I think about John's presentation just previously, I just want to make sure I understand as we line up his presentation to what Molly was presenting. And I believe, and I want somebody to correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe my takeaway is that while our benefits get stagnant for the higher earners, the percentage of people utilizing this program are in fact the higher earners. I thought I saw the folks who are utilizing it was like 16% of the folks who are within the minimum wage category. So, I don't know, John, if you could help me kind of parlay what I'm trying to understand. But I think it would be interesting to see the utilization compared to these brackets, because my first impression was, are we actually meeting the legislative intent of helping those that are at the most risk? And if I were to think about John's slide, I would say, wait a minute, those folks aren't utilizing the program as much as we would like. But on the flip side, if they do, they are getting almost 100% wage replacement. So I just want to understand that caveat.
So Melissa, I think that with regard to that payment slide that we were showing before and the kind of different thresholds of where those folks wind up, the one at the lowest end, I believe that the reason why those folks are in that tranche of benefit rate, if you will, is likely because they are working less than 40 hours. They're probably part-timers in many cases, because that threshold is below the calculation of the 40 hours times the minimum wage at 95%. So that's the likely explanation. Or maybe somebody worked for a shorter time period during the course of the year and had only had a single quarter of wages available or something to that extent that was usable for calculating that benefit. So that goes into that piece of the puzzle there. The middle range there is kind of in between the minimum wage times 40 and the maximum benefit. And then again, that upper component is all individuals that are earning the maximum. But as Molly pointed out, that threshold is relatively low in terms of what the actual median wage is here in Connecticut, and earners here in Connecticut. That threshold is approximately about $65,000 in gross earnings in order to generate that maximum benefit rate. So that's one of the reasons why, as Molly pointed out, the percentage of individuals that are receiving benefits at that higher rate, or at the maximum rate.
I could just jump in. I see your hand up, Molly, but I just want to share, periodically we do run a compare of our breakdown of benefits. Folks who meet the eligibility standard up to the 40 times Connecticut minimum wage, folks in the middle, and then the folks capped. That does require DOL information. So you've got a bit of a lag getting that information. It is about time for us to run another compare. I don't remember the last time we ran that and shared it. So about 15 minutes ago, I wrote in my notebook things to do, and one of them was Dave and Locke DOL data about earnings compared to our 3 payment buckets. So we will work on that with the caveat of, I think this is going to be data that Connecticut DOL has on hand and isn't going to require federal DOL data. If it does, it may take a little bit more time, but I think it's interesting to do. And I think my recollection of the past is that we were, Dave, I don't know if you remember this off the top of your head. I feel like we were slightly overrepresented in the middle range. But we will absolutely run it again, and I'll pull up the old one so we can see how we've been comparing. Because I think, Melissa, that goes to the point of what is our utilization compared to the workforce is an important way of us assessing if we're meeting the promise.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Molly.
Molly?
First, I want to say thank you for Melissa's excellent points, particularly about utilization and the dynamic minimum wage, and to Ava's point. I think that's really helpful. And just to clarify, I think at this point, I wouldn't speak for anyone else. I don't have a recommendation at this point of, if I were speaking to the legislator today, I don't know if I would make a recommendation to make changes. I am confident that it's an appropriate juncture to talk about it, and to talk as a board and in the relevant committees about whether the benefits are where we need them to be to meet the needs of Connecticut workers. And I think in that conversation, there's more to learn. And I think a lot of what's just been flagged is helpful in understanding that. I think this is a good juncture now that we have a couple years under our belt. We have a sense of it to think about whether we are going to be. And I think particularly to Melissa's point, to think about that holistically in relation to what we're hearing actuarially about thinking about the program. Like, I think as we're really thinking throughout this program about what sort of the benefit we're delivering to Connecticut workers in exchange for the contributions they're contributing, those all go together. It's workers coming and going. And so we should be thinking about all of this together as we move forward. And I'm looking forward to continuing to do that work with the rest of the board.
Thank you, Molly. And thank you, Melissa. All really good points and things to think about. Erin, is there anything else that you would like to add, or would anybody else like to add to this discussion? I don't see anyone else's hand raised, and I want to thank everyone for that really robust discussion. These are really important points, and I love the chart, Molly. The only enhancement that I would love to see on the chart would be if we could see the salary ranges, associated with those earnings, the annual salaries. That would just help me if you have a moment of time, but it's absolutely not necessary.
It's already in the Excel document. I just have to add it to the Word table and make it fit on the page.
Awesome. Okay, I love it. And I think you make a really good point. I mean, we're neither, we're right in the middle. It seems to me like we're right in the middle, and I think we can do better. And those are definitely points to be aware of and for continued conversation. So thanks, everyone. Okay, this is exciting. We are going to ask for a vote to elect 2 new members of our board to fulfill the role of vice chair and secretary. So I am excited because I've received a nomination for Molly Weston Williams to step in as vice chair and Eleanor Michael as secretary. And if are there any other nominations for anyone? Okay, if there are no other nominations, may I have a motion to elect Molly Weston Williamson as vice chair and Eleanor Michael as secretary?
So moved.
Thank you, Andrea. May I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Adrian. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, excellent. The motion carries. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you to Molly and Eleanor, and congratulations. Okay, Sheila, I see your message. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the committee reports. Item 10 are on our agenda, and we are moving right along here. Mike, policy and personnel.
Yes, good morning to everyone. Our committee met last week and we reviewed some of the things you saw today, the revisions to the private plan audit guide. We reviewed the bylaws, we reviewed the plan of operations, and Aaron provided us a staffing update, and our next meeting is in January. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Molly, outreach and engagement.
The committee didn't meet this month. We'll meet in a week on November 20th. Please join us if you want to.
Excellent, thank you. And Holly, finance and audit committee report.
The committee did meet at the end of October and received an update on the audited financial statements, which were presented earlier in the meeting. And Dave is going to now present our financial reports.
Excellent.
Thank you, Holly. And good morning, everybody.
You can see your screen, Dave.
Thank you for the confirmation. Okay, we are going to go over the results for September of 2025. And as usual, we'll start with the operating account. Our operating results were $976,000 spent for the month of September. That did result in a positive variance of $334,000. Typical expenses, payroll, contact center, outreach. We did have one line item that was a negative variance, and that was for grievance adjudication, but that was due to a timing difference because we paid it a month later than we normally do. So year to date, we're still on target. Speaking of year to date, our results are almost $978,000. Year to date, we've been running a positive variance of $847,000, and we've had positive variances on the line items pretty much for most items across the board. No significant negative line item variances to speak of. Moving on to bond money. Not much to say because we didn't pay out any bond money during the month. We actually paid it the very first week of the following month, so we're going to have two next month. So that's why we had a positive variance of $42,000 for the month, and we have a $13,500 variance, but that'll run closer to zero next month when we catch up with the bond payments. And so the bond money available is still at $1.3 million, and we continue to use that. Moving on to contribution activity, we had negative $37.6 million of activity that resulted in a just over $2 million negative variance. That was due to benefit payments, make up most of that variance. Our benefit payments for the month were just over $38.5 million. John had mentioned before that over the last 6 months, we've had a run rate of about $9.4 million a week. And so for the month of September, we're within range of that. We were at $9.6 million per week for the month of September. That's actually a decrease from the prior month of August, which was 9.9. August was an unusual month. Again, if you remember John's chart, there was we had our highest week ever in the month of August, almost $10.3 million. So that caused the average weekly rate to go up. But now it's stabilized a little bit more at $9.6 million. In terms of the money coming in, we had $559,000 for the month. That was a positive variance. Fund recovery was just about at what we expected, and investment income is $2.1 million. We are earning for September, we earned about an effective rate of 4.3%, which has gone down from prior months since the feds have lowered their rates. Year to date, our activity is just under $6.3 million. That is a negative variance of almost 9.4. Again, that's because the benefit payments that we're paying out are higher than we budgeted a few months ago. The contribution fund itself is in a good place. We are at just over $592.1 million of money in the reserve available for payments. Just wanted to give everybody a quick preview of October. Our operating expenses were $1.4 million. That's a little higher than it's been the past few months because we had 3 pay periods in the month. That happens a few times during the year, and October was one of them. Benefit payments for the month of October was almost $47.9 million. We paid out, we reimbursed Aflac 5 weeks of payments, so that's why it looks higher than usual. The weekly run rate for October was again $9.6 million. So we are seeing in the past couple of months a steady run rate of 9.6 in the more recent months. Being the month of October, that's when most of the contributions come in. For the most recent quarter, we got in over $109.9 million and just over $2 million of investment income. So that's where we are through September and a preview of October. Happy to take any questions at this time.
Nice job, Dave. Thank you. Are there any questions for Dave? Seeing no hands raised, we're going to move along to Erin to provide your CEO report. Dave, thank you so much.
Thank you, Fran. I want to thank Molly and Eleanor for being willing to step in and work with Fran on our executive committee. Do you want to remind everybody that we are busy planning the 2026 calendar? If you would like to change your committee assignments, please let Fran and or me know so that we can plan for that. We love all of our committee members and we love having you on them, but we know that some folks might want to change. So if that is you, please just let us know. We will be asking each committee when they meet to confirm their committee cadence. Policy and Personnel had consensus that meeting every other month, which was an innovation for 2025, worked for them. So we'll be asking that of the other committees just so you can be prepared. Just a quick update on a couple of past inquiries. We will be sharing our org chart with the union designations indicated on the org chart. We went through that with Policy Personnel, but we had so much going on today. We felt it was just easier. That is something that could be emailed. So you'll be getting that. We also had received a request to do an analysis of impact on the fund if unionized state employees participated. It is a pretty high data request. So we've been working with DAS and OPM for them to compile the data, and then once they do the data pull, it goes to the data team at OPM who can actually clean it and get it corrected, not corrected, but get it into a workable shape so that it can be given to our actuaries. Given the fact that this also involves FMLA information, there was also some hoops we had to run through with the data privacy folks. But I'm happy to report that after a few months of working through all of those obstacles, the data was finally pulled. OPM is working on the cleanup, and we are looking forward to getting it soon so we can give it to the actuaries. So we've been working on that and more to come in the future. We've been trying to provide as much information as the board wants or needs, information about what we do, information about our trends, information about other programs. So we know this adds a little time to the meetings, but we really appreciate your interest. I think it is, I think it's interesting, but I think it's important for you all to have that context. If there is information that you think we should be providing to you or that you are interested in, please let me know or let Fran know. I think Fran.
Use my cell for 1 second, my
Sure.
doorbell.
Okay. We want to make sure that you have all the information you need to fulfill your responsibilities, and sometimes we forget that what we are doing on a daily basis may not be as intuitive to you. So please do reach out and let us know if there's any information that you would like us to repeat or share on a more frequent basis, or if there's gaps. I did make a note about the actuary reports and scenarios. I also want to let you know that we are already planning to, I think in the January meeting, most likely, have Michael come back and talk a little bit more about the private plans, give you a fuller understanding of the private plan universe that he oversees. And special guest appearance from Matt Blowski will be talking about our IT, of where we are, what we've done, what it does, and where we're going, because it's been quite a minute since we've done that. So that's my update. And again, if there is information that you would like us to present at board meetings, please don't hesitate to let me know. We're here to give you the information you need and want. So thank you very much. And Fran is back.
I am back. Sorry about that. Any questions for Erin? All right. Do we have any old business? Any new business? Okay, we're all getting some time back in our day. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, everyone, thank you so much. The motion carries. The time is 10:19. Welcome to Molly and Eleanor, and everyone have a wonderful holiday, Thanksgiving.
You too.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks, everyone.